People still believe that family is a place of peace, a refuge where happiness can be found. But in Hollywood, behind the glittering lights and perfect smiles, many families hide truths that send chills down the spine. Some stars were turned into money-making machines by their own parents from childhood. Some forced young lovers to discard an unborn child to protect a career. And some families were destroyed by spirals of violence, depression, and murder. Right now, let's uncover 24 of the most shocking family secrets Hollywood stars have buried for decades. And trust me, the truths at the end of the list will leave you stunned. 1. Merle Oberon. A hidden origin from a stepfather-stepdaughter relationship. In 1939, Merle Oberon reached the pinnacle with Wuthering Heights. The British press praised her as the Tasmanian Rose, and MGM fabricated a dossier claiming Oberon was born into an aristocratic family in Hobart. They picked this location because Tasmania's civil records had once been destroyed in a fire-making verification impossible. But the truth lay in Bombay, India, where Merle was born in 1911. Her birth mother was only 12 and her father was her stepfather. To conceal it, she grew up believing her grandmother was her mother, and her biological mother was merely a sister. When she arrived in London in 1928, Oberon was forced to lighten her skin and avoid strong set lighting to hide her brown complexion. For years, all of Hollywood believed the Tasmanian lady story. Even her husband, director Alexander Korda, was once unaware. Merle lived her entire life afraid of being exposed. She refused to return to India and dodged all questions about her origins. Only after her death in 1979 was a birth certificate found in Bombay, exposing the entire fabrication. A mixed-race star had to deny herself for life, all to fit the whitewashed dream Hollywood constructed. Merle Oberon spent her life fearing her origins would be revealed, building a false identity to survive under the spotlight. But Hollywood doesn't only deal in fabricated backgrounds. In an even darker corner lies a story that violated every moral boundary and made the industry shudder: an Oscar-winning actress exposed for sleeping with her husband's own son. That was Gloria Grahame. 2. Gloria Grahame, an Oscar winner who slept with her husband's son. The 1950s in Hollywood were no stranger to noisy affairs, but Gloria Grahame's scandal stunned the entire town. The Oscar-winning star of The Bad and the Beautiful was exposed for having a relationship with Tony Ray, the son of director Nicholas Ray. The shock erupted in 1951 when Nicholas unexpectedly returned to the Beverly Hills mansion on Sunset Boulevard. In an upstairs room, he found a scene he could never forget: his young wife and his son in a situation that defied explanation. The story spread immediately within the inner circles. MGM and RKO poured tens of thousands of dollars into silencing the tabloids. Nicholas Ray filed for divorce, but Gloria's private life didn't stop there. In 1960, she and Tony Ray secretly married in Tijuana, Mexico, with only a few friends as witnesses. When the matter resurfaced during a 1962 custody case, the Los Angeles Examiner ran a chilling headline: one of the worst stains in Hollywood history. Graham's career nosedived. From an A-list star, she drifted to England, performing in Liverpool and Brighton on stages with only a few hundred seats. Years later, when she tried to return to the US, the press still called her the woman who broke the ultimate taboo. Gloria Grahame proved that fame can shatter overnight, but her tragedy still pales beside the darkness that swallowed the stolen childhood of love goddess Rita Hayworth. 3. Rita Hayworth, a beauty icon controlled by her father from age 12. Rita Hayworth, the beauty icon of the 1940s and the star of Gilda, was hailed by the press as the love goddess. But behind the dazzling lights was a haunted youth. Her father, Eduardo Cancino, a Spanish dancer, turned his daughter into a money-making tool when she was just 12. He forced Rita to tour nightclubs from Tijuana, Mexico to Las Vegas, making her perform seductive dances to draw crowds. Witnesses at the Agua Caliente Club recalled a skinny girl standing under blistering lights, eyes red with exhaustion, yet compelled by her father to continue. Eduardo's control crossed the boundaries of fatherhood. Rita grew up feeling both terrified and numb. The New York Times repeatedly noted that Rita rarely smiled genuinely off-set, while columnist Luella Parsons wrote that Hayworth glows on screen but seems always to be running away in real life. Across 5 marriages, from genius Orson Welles to Prince Ali Khan, she still failed to find happiness. Her haunting line, "They go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me," was quoted across magazines as a painful confession. If Gloria Grahame was destroyed by a taboo romance, Rita Hayworth lived her life inside an invisible cage built by her father. But another star had to confront death itself in her own room: Clara Bow, Hollywood's first it girl. 4. Clara Bow, a mother's attempted murder and a father's darkest secrets. Clara Bow, The face of 1920s allure turned the phrase "it girl" into legend, yet her fame hid a tragic childhood. Born in Brooklyn's slums, Clara lived with a mother suffering from mental illness. In 1922, in their shabby apartment on Prospect Place, Clara Bow held a knife to her daughter's throat, intending to end it all. Clara's screams rang out to the street neighbors rushed in, and she was saved in the nick of time. The Brooklyn police filed a report, but the family buried the incident. Her father, Robert Bow, sank into alcohol and gambling and was often violent. In Hollywood circles, rumors swirled that he crossed lines with his own daughter, though never admitted Clara carried psychological wounds for life. Off-screen, she suffered insomnia and relied on sedatives. On the pages of Photoplay and Motion Picture magazine, her image remained radiant and seductive. In 1931, at just 26, she abruptly retired. Hollywood lost an icon. Audiences lost a firework that flared and then vanished. Just a few years after Bow retired, another icon, this time not an it girl, but the greatest comedy genius, left the public reeling. He not only made people laugh on screen, but turned the American press into a battlefield when he was forced to hastily marry a 16-year-old to avoid criminal charges. That man was Charlie Chaplin. 5. Charlie Chaplin. Forced to wed a 16-year-old to escape prosecution. In 1924, as Hollywood entered its golden age, nothing shocked it more than Charlie Chaplin's sex scandal. At 35, busy filming The Gold Rush in Los Angeles, Chaplin had an illicit affair with Rita Hayworth, a co-star only 16. The clandestine romance quickly became a nightmare when Rita became pregnant. Under California law at the time, Chaplin could have faced prison for relations with a minor. In a panic, Chaplin's team arranged a lightning trip to Mexico. There, he and Rita quietly married in a small church in Agua Prieta with no family or friends present. The press was muzzled by United Artists' power, but news inevitably leaked, leaving an indelible stain. It peaked in 1927 when Rita filed for divorce with a complaint over 50 pages long, accusing Chaplin of infidelity with a Ziegfeld Follies dancer, emotional abuse, and treating his wife and children as obstacles. The Los Angeles Times called it the dirtiest divorce in Hollywood history. Though Chaplin went on to create masterpieces like City Lights and Modern Times, the scandal's shadow clung to his name. From comedic genius, he became a notorious philanderer, his reputation never fully cleansed. Chaplin may seem immortal with his cane and mustache, but scandal forever tarnished his name. The next generation of Hollywood wasn't spared from family ghosts either. 40 years later, another identity shock erupted, this time not from romance, but from a truth hidden for nearly 4 decades. 6. Jack Nicholson. 37 years living inside an identity trick. After triumphs like the Manic Killer in The Shining 1980 and the infamous Joker on screen, Jack Nicholson still faced a personal shock worthy of a Hollywood script. Born in 1937 in New Jersey, Jack grew up believing Ethel May, a strict, kind woman, was his mother. June, the young woman who often disappeared to work away, he regarded as his sister. For 37 years, Jack held this belief, grateful to both women without ever questioning it. Everything changed in 1974 when a Time magazine reporter combed public records while preparing a profile of Nicholson, then a star after Chinatown. The reporter discovered that June was his biological mother, while Ethel May, the woman Jack had called mother his whole life, was actually his grandmother. The blow was crueler still. Both women had already died, leaving Jack no one to confront. Outwardly, Jack told the press he was not psychically traumatized. But those close to him said he changed. He grew wilder, diving into endless parties in the Hollywood Hills, as if trying to drown the pain in rebellion. Perhaps the family mask being ripped off so late helped create a more impulsive, risk-embracing Jack Nicholson, fuel for a career both brilliant and scandal-tinged. Jack Nicholson lived 37 years inside an identity ruse, and Hollywood was stunned when the truth broke. Sometimes, though, the shock doesn't come from secrets kept, but from your own kin exposing everything. Joan Crawford is the most painful example, a monument praised in life, only to be unmasked by her adopted daughter a year after death. 7. Joan Crawford, exposed for cruelty in the memoir, Mommy Dearest. Joan Crawford was once hailed as Hollywood's queen. When she died in 1977, Variety and the Los Angeles Times ran lengthy tributes portraying her as an eternal screen icon. Yet a year later, the golden statue cracked. Christina Crawford, her adopted daughter, released the memoir, Mommy Dearest, a bombshell that shook Tinseltown. In it, Christina recounts a childhood like a military camp, beatings, endless housework, until exhaustion. The most haunting detail is Joan's fury over metal hangers, forcing her daughter to clean out the entire closet in tears. From there, no wire hangers became an infamous catchphrase repeated on TV and stage and turned into a cultural satire in America. In 1981, Hollywood brought the story to the screen. The film Mommy Dearest with Faye Dunaway as Joan Crawford transformed her from a glamorous icon into the face of tyranny. Meanwhile, the press probed Joan's ties to Georgia Tann, who ran a child trafficking ring disguised as an adoption agency in Tennessee. All 4 of Crawford's adopted children came through Tann's organization. Though there's no proof Joan knew the truth, this fact alone made audiences shudder and question whether the Crawford family was the product of a shadowy system. Joan Crawford lost her halo not from a failed role, but from the image of a cruel mother painted by her own daughter. And while Hollywood still argued over truth and exaggeration, another shock shattered public faith this time from America's beloved voice of Christmas, Bing Crosby. 8. Bing Crosby, America's Santa, accused by his sons of strap beatings. Every Christmas, Bing Crosby's White Christmas fills American homes carrying the warm image of a gentle father. On screen, he played kind priests, winning millions of hearts. But in 1983, when his eldest son, Gary Crosby, published the memoir Going My Own Way, that shimmering veil was torn apart. Gary accused his father of punishing the children with a strap. Each week they were forced to step on a scale. Anyone who gained weight was beaten black and blue. Brothers Dennis and Lindsay admitted in interviews that their childhood memories were filled with violence and fear. The tragedy deepened when Lindsay fell into severe depression and died by suicide in 1989, leaving a note hinting at the family's dark shadow. These revelations turned Crosby from America's Santa into a two-faced figure. Other family members denied it, calling the accusations exaggerated. But the rift among his own children chilled the public. Ever since When White Christmas plays, people remember not only the warmth, but also the fear inside the Crosby home. If Joan Crawford was toppled by her daughter's memoir, Bing Crosby broke America's heart as a fallen idol. Then Hollywood witnessed another humiliation so severe the family fled town, the childhood of Judy Garland. 9. Judy Garland. A family forced to flee after rumors of her father's affairs with boys. Before entering film history as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, 1939, Judy Garland carried a heavy family secret. In 1926, when Judy was 4, her family abruptly left Grand Rapids, Minnesota in the night. The town was told they were seeking new opportunities in California, but chilling rumors spread frank gum. Judy's father was whispered to have secret relationships with local boys. In conservative 1920s, America, such rumors were a social death sentence. They fled to escape prying eyes. In California, MGM quickly discovered Judy's extraordinary voice and crafted her into the perfect American girl. Yet the foundation of that career was a bitter escape. In her memories, Judy still called her father loving and inspiring. But the scandal's shadow never lifted. It became an emotional wound that left her fragile. Her early death at 47 only underlined a tragedy rooted in childhood. Judy Garland carried the scar of a family secret all her life. Then, another family shock, this time even more ironic, rocked Hollywood. Jack Nicholson, the rebellious icon of the 1970s, discovered that the sister he revered was actually his mother. 10. Bobby Darin discovering his real mother was his sister. Bobby Darin, the golden voice behind hits like Mac the Knife and Dream Lover, enchanted 1950s American youth. But behind the spotlight was an unbelievable family tragedy. Growing up in the Bronx, Bobby believed Polly was his mother, and Nina, the vibrant eldest, was simply his sister. Only in the late 1960s, after Fame and while preparing for a Las Vegas show, did Bobby learn the truth: Nina was his birth mother and Polly was his grandmother. The shock nearly crushed him. Born with a congenital heart condition, Darin had always lived under a ticking clock. The family revelation sent him into a tailspin. He abandoned glossy pop for somber folk and protest songs. Friends recalled that in his final years, Bobby often wept backstage, lamenting that he had lived his youth inside a staged play. In 1973, he died during heart surgery at 37, leaving a generation stunned. From teen idol, he became a tragic symbol of truths hidden too long. If Bobby Darin collapsed under an identity shock, Ingrid Bergman, the Angel of Casablanca, faced an entire nation turning its back when the U.S. Congress itself condemned her. 11. Ingrid Bergman. The Casablanca Angel harshly condemned by the U.S. Congress. In the public eye of the 1940s, Ingrid Bergman embodied purity. The leading lady of Casablanca, 1942, and the star of The Bells of St. Mary's, 1945, she was the angel of the silver screen America adored. But in 1949, everything collapsed when Bergman left her doctor husband Peter Lindstrom for Italian director Roberto Rossellini. She became pregnant before her divorce was finalized, an unforgivable offense to conservative America. Outrage exploded. The Los Angeles Examiner called it a slap in the face of American morality. At its peak, Senator Edwin C. Johnson stood on the floor of Congress to denounce Bergman as a tool of evil and a destroyer of family values. Hollywood blacklisted her. Studios turned away. Bergman left the U.S. and lived in European exile for 7 years, acting only in small art films in Italy. In 1956, Bergman returned in Anastasia. The film not only succeeded, but earned her an Oscar, a kind of atonement from Hollywood after years of rejection. Her story shows how Hollywood can raise someone to heaven, then cast them into hell for a love deemed improper. While Ingrid Bergman was publicly condemned, another leading man, Rock Hudson, had to live his entire life behind a mask forced on him by Hollywood. 12. Rock Hudson. The superstar forced into marriage to hide a gay scandal. In the 1950s, Rock Hudson was the ideal American man, tall, elegant, with a smile that melted millions of hearts. He paired with Doris Day in sweet romantic comedies, becoming a big-screen hero. But behind that perfect facade, Hudson was gay, a secret Hollywood viewed as a career-killing threat. In 1955, Confidential magazine began threatening to expose Hudson's private life. Immediately, Universal Pictures and his manager, Henry Wilson, staged a sham marriage with Phyllis Gates, Hudson's own secretary. The wedding was rushed in Santa Barbara with the press snapping photos, but it was pure theater for public consumption. The marriage lasted 3 years, then quietly dissolved. Behind the scenes, friends recalled Hudson often hosting private parties in Beverly Hills where he could be himself. The press stayed absolutely silent, knowing a single wrong headline could destroy Hollywood's cash cow star. Not until 1985, when Hudson publicly revealed he had AIDS, did the fabricated wall collapse. The public was stunned not only by the illness, but by the truth one of cinema's most romantic leading men had been forced to hide who he was for decades just to survive. Hudson was not the only case. Another TV megastar created an entire family completely fictional to hide his real-life Raymond Burr, the famed Perry Mason lawyer. 13. Raymond Burr building a ghost wife and child to conceal his true life. Audiences in the 1950s were captivated by Perry Mason, the hit TV series starring Raymond Burr as the upright lawyer. On screen, he was the embodiment of justice, the model man American families trusted. Off-screen, Burr told reporters heartbreaking stories: a young wife killed in a plane crash, a son who died of illness, and then another marriage ruined by cancer. The public found the tales so convincing that sympathy and admiration for him only grew. But after Burr died in 1993, Los Angeles Times reporters traced the records and uncovered a shocking truth: there had been no wife, no child. The entire family was a fabrication Burr repeated to the press for decades. The reason for this long-running ruse emerged: Burr lived with his male partner Robert Benavides. In a society that condemned homosexuality, he chose to invent a tragic, fictitious family to protect his reputation. The public was stunned to realize Burr wasn't just an actor on screen, his entire life had been a performance until the very end. And just as Burr hid himself behind the mask of a fake family Hollywood monument, Spencer Tracy concealed a real loved one that lasted 26 years without the public ever knowing. 14. Spencer Tracy. 26 years hiding a forbidden romance with Katharine Hepburn. Spencer Tracy, a two-time Oscar winner, was seen as the model Catholic gentleman, a faithful husband, a devoted father, an upright star. American papers called him the soul of the screen. Yet within Hollywood, everyone knew he had a secret 26-year romance with the legendary Katharine Hepburn. They first met on the set of Woman of the Year 1942. Sparks flew instantly, but Tracy never divorced his wife due to his religious beliefs. Hepburn accepted being the woman in the shadows, quietly visiting sets, caring for Tracy when he was ill, then disappearing before the press could spot her. The love story became public only after Tracy died in 1967. Hepburn later recalled in an interview, "It was a love that was never allowed to shine." To the world, Tracy remained the model man. Behind the curtain, he lived a parallel life with a forbidden love. If Spencer Tracy chose to love in silence, then Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, chose a harsher silence, letting his own daughter grow up under the label of an adopted child. 15. Clark Gable and Loretta Young. Biological daughter turned into an adoptee. Clark Gable. The star of Gone with the Wind was hailed as the king of Hollywood. In 1935, while co-starring in The Call of the Wild with Loretta Young, a famously demure leading lady, the two had a brief affair. The result was Loretta's pregnancy. In that strict era, an unmarried star having a child was unacceptable. Loretta disappeared from Hollywood for several months, then returned with a baby girl introduced as an adopted child named Judy. The film press of the time, from Photoplay to Motion Picture Herald, praised the charitable act, never suspecting Judy was, in fact, Loretta and Gable's biological daughter. Gable never publicly acknowledged her. Judy grew up with questions about her origins. Only when she published her memoir Uncommon Knowledge in 1994 did the secret come to light, shocking the public. It remains one of the most audacious hidden child cover-ups in Hollywood history, a reminder that some stardom is built on bitter lies. Clark Gable chose lifelong silence. But Gary Cooper, the emblem of upright cowboy virtue, chose something more ruthless, pressuring his young lover to have an abortion to protect his career. 16. Gary Cooper coercing his young lover to secretly abort. In the public eye of the 1940s and 50s, Gary Cooper was Hollywood's golden face, tall, calm, steady-eyed. After the sweeping success of High Noon 1952, he was celebrated as the ideal American man, honorable, brave, unbending. But behind the prestige lay a secret that stained the Western hero with cruelty. In 1950, married with a child, Cooper fell into an affair with Patricia Neal, a rising actress in her early 20s after The Fountainhead. Amid lavish Beverly Hills parties and late nights at Paramount, the affair burned hot. When Neal became pregnant, Cooper panicked. He feared that trade papers like The Hollywood Reporter or the Los Angeles Examiner would catch the scent, and that a scandal could bury his career at its peak. According to Neal's memoir, decades later, Cooper exerted intense pressure, forcing her to undergo a secret abortion at a New York clinic. "It was the most painful decision of my life," Neal wrote, "a ghost I carried to the very end." While Cooper remained atop the Hollywood ladder, Neal suffered psychological torment, sank into depression, and was hospitalized more than once. The story surfaced only after both had passed their prime, but it left a deep stain in real life. A screen hero behaved like a coward, sacrificing love and an unborn life to safeguard his glory. As audiences began to doubt what model behavior meant for stars, Hollywood witnessed an even more harrowing scandal. Mary Astor and the infamous diary whose pages turned a courtroom into a theater screening a star's private sex life. 17. Mary Astor. The Purple Diary and the bedroom secrets laid bare. Mary Astor, famed for The Maltese Falcon. 1941 seemed destined to be remembered for poise and talent. But in 1936, during a custody battle with ex-husband Franklin Thorpe, Hollywood exploded when her private diary was dragged into court. In pages the press dubbed The Purple Diary Astor, recorded in detail her affairs with prominent figures from playwright George S. Kaufman to well-known New York politicians. The Los Angeles Examiner and the New York Daily News ran excerpt after excerpt. Circulation soared, eclipsing even headlines about Europe teetering on the brink of war. The Los Angeles courtroom became a stage where intimate details were devoured by a ravenous public. In the end, Astor won custody, but her career never escaped the diary's shadow. She kept working yet. For many viewers, Mary Astor remained tied to one of the most notorious bedroom scandals of all time. While Mary Astor lived under that purple legacy, Patty Duke faced a twisted paternity saga that left Hollywood and even her son stunned decades later. 18. Patty Duke, a star, pregnant without knowing who the father was. In the early 1970s, Hollywood reeled when Patty Duke, the golden girl who'd won an Oscar as a teen for The Miracle Worker, unexpectedly became pregnant. The problem was, even Patty wasn't sure who the father was. The press flooded the story centering three names: John Astin, star of The Addams Family; Desi Arnaz Jr., son of legends Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz; and Michael Tell, a little-known journalist-musician whom Patty impulsively married for 13 days before separating, never living together for even a day. America watched as if it were a serialized drama. People magazine ran "Who is the Father?" Features late-night shows turned the scandal into punchlines, and Patty spiraled into crisis. She decided to tell her son Sean that his father was John Astin, whom she later married. But the rumors never died. Not until the 1990s, when DNA testing became common, did Sean take a test and discover the truth: Michael Tell. The name most people had written off was his biological father. The saga became a bitter reminder that fate can be more perverse than the cleverest screenwriter. From Patty Duke's paternity shock, audiences turned to Barbara Stanwyck, the steel-willed queen of film noir, who off-screen severed the bond with the very child she once brought home. 19. Barbara Stanwyck cutting off all ties with her adopted son. Barbara Stanwyck, hailed as the queen of film noir, was among the most powerful faces of 1940s Hollywood. She once moved the press to tears by adopting a boy named Dion, turning it into a Tinseltown fairy tale. The public adored the image of a devoted mother conquering the screen while raising a child. But as Dion grew up, the relationship cracked. Some said Stanwyck was too strict and consumed by work, while Dion felt abandoned. In 1951, when a Los Angeles Times reporter asked about her son, Stanwyck replied coldly, "I have no son." The words sent shockwaves through the media, shattering the idealized image of motherhood and recasting it as chilling cruelty. By 1990, when Stanwyck died, she left a vast estate to friends and charities, while Dion received a token $5,000, a symbolic erasure of their bond. Fans who'd worshipped her on screen had to swallow the bitterness of her real-life choices. If Barbara Stanwyck exposed the vast gap between screen and life, Jerry Lewis, the king of American comedy, presented an even starker paradox, a man celebrated for charity who denied his own flesh and blood. 20. Jerry Lewis, famed for charity yet denying his own daughter. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Americans awaited Jerry Lewis's annual telethon. For dozens of hours live on national TV, he sang, wept, and pleaded, raising millions for disabled children. The New York Times called him the father of the unfortunate, and Time once put his portrait on a cover celebrating compassion. But behind the glare was a family story that chilled the nation. Susan, his out-of-wedlock daughter, publicly stated multiple times that Lewis never recognized or supported her, leaving her to grow up in poverty. Worse, with Ronald, one of his adopted sons, Lewis, even struck him from the will, as if the relationship had never existed. When Lewis died in 2017, the scandal reignited. His 6 legitimate sons were all excluded from inheritance, receiving not a cent. USA Today and CNN asked, how could a man who begged America for empathy for millions of children be so cold to his own? The saint of charity image turned into a mirror of contradictions. Jerry Lewis was lauded for generosity to the world, yet to the children bearing his name, he left emptiness. That stark contrast led many to recall another case, Marlon Brando. Unlike Jerry Lewis, Brando didn't ignore his children in silence. His 11 offspring were dragged into a vortex of scandal, violence, and loss, turning his family into a real-life tragedy darker than any film he made. 21. Marlon Brando, the great star bound to the tragedies of his 11 children. Marlon Brando. The legend of The Godfather was known not only for his acting genius, but for a chaotic private life. He had at least 11 children from marriages, brief affairs, and adoptions across continents. The press called it a legendary clan, but inside it looked like an unending tragedy. In 1990, Hollywood was shaken when Christian Brando, his eldest son, shot and killed Dog Drolla, the boyfriend of his half-sister Cheyenne, at the family mansion on Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles. The case dragged on for months, dominating the front pages of the Los Angeles Times and People magazine. On-screen, Brando was the powerful godfather. In court, he was a broken father, hiding his face in tears as the verdict was read. The pain didn't stop. Cheyenne Brando's Tahitian daughter couldn't bear the shock of losing her lover and fell into severe depression. She was hospitalized in Papeete, then took her own life in 1995 at just 25. The tragedy devastated Brando, who withdrew into his Beverly Hills estate and slowly distanced himself from Hollywood. His life became proof that even the greatest star is helpless before the storm of family chaos. And as Brando fell under the weight of his children's suffering, the public discovered that a seemingly perfect gentleman like Leslie Howard had also left a hidden legacy that stunned posterity. 22. Leslie Howard, the Gone with the Wind gentleman, and a secret out-of-wedlock child. In Gone with the Wind, 1939, Leslie Howard embodied Ashley Wilkes, the model of refined, faithful manhood. Off-screen, Howard was celebrated as a quintessential English gentleman. But decades after his death, London archives began to reveal a startling truth. In 1924, at age 31, Leslie Howard had a clandestine affair with a young woman in London. The result was an out-of-wedlock child immediately sent away to be raised elsewhere to avoid scandal. Howard never acknowledged the child, publicly maintaining the image of a devoted husband and father to his official family. When he died in a 1943 plane shoot-down, the public honored him as a wartime icon. But personal letters and journals later exposed the truth. A brief romance had left a silent imprint on history. Even the perfect gentleman had his shadows, a reminder that legends are only human. If Leslie Howard left a hidden love, then Jean Tierney, a breathtaking beauty, spent her life with a pain unwittingly inflicted by a fan. 23. Jean Tierney, a fan's recklessness, left the star's daughter disabled. In the 1940s, Hollywood worshipped Jean Tierney as a flawless muse with a Face Life magazine called the most beautiful in cinema. At her peak, she suffered a shock few could imagine. In June 1943, Jean appeared at a USO event at the Hollywood Canteen to cheer soldiers before deployment. Amid the crush of people, a female fan broke through a barrier to hug and kiss Jean, even though she had rubella and was under medical quarantine. That brief contact infected Jean during pregnancy. When her daughter Daria was born, doctors delivered the hammer blow. The baby was deaf, partially blind, and intellectually disabled. In that glitter-obsessed era, studios treated this as a stain to hide at all costs. Jean placed her child in a special facility in Connecticut and went back before the camera wearing a smile as if nothing had happened. The Hollywood press kept praising Jean as a symbol of happiness. No one knew that after each shoot she quietly visited the hospital, then returned home in tears. Years later in her memoir, Jean confessed, "I spent my whole life trying to live with that moment." This tragedy was not just personal. It was a Hollywood curse. A fan's irresponsible moment turned a star's life into unending sorrow. And while Jean staggered under her child's pain, another silent-era legend, Lon Chaney Sr., carried a terrifying family secret that haunted him for life. 24. Lon Chaney Sr., a man who hid his deaf-mute parents out of pride. Lon Chaney Sr., dubbed the Man of a Thousand Faces, was famed for transformative performances in The Phantom of the Opera 1925 and The Hunchback of Notre Dame 1923. People assumed such talent was a gift, but it sprang from a secret he considered a lifelong shame. Born in 1883 in Colorado, Chaney came from a marginalized household. Both parents were deaf-mute. In those days, families like his were shunned, viewed as genetic defects. Lon grew up in silence, communicating only with signs and glances. Instead of pride, he harbored an intense, corrosive shame. That obsession drove him to hide the truth. Entering Hollywood, he constructed a false biography and dodged every question about his family. Even when he first married Lon, kept silent until his wife Cleva accidentally encountered her in-laws and learned the truth. The shock nearly destroyed their marriage and culminated in Cleva's onstage poison attempt in 1913, a scandal of the era. Chaney's career soared, but he lived behind a double mask on screen, a man of a thousand faces. In life, a man who buried his roots. A childhood steeped in silence and humiliation taught him to speak with his eyes instead of words, but it also turned him into someone who spent a lifetime fleeing his past. Lon Chaney left a towering legacy, yet his story chills the audience. Sometimes extraordinary talent is born of secrets its owner would rather die than reveal. Looking back at these 24 secrets, the glow of Hollywood often proves to be a curtain hiding family tragedies no one wants to mention. Those once hailed by the world lived in lies, pain, and even despair within their own homes. It makes us wonder, is fame truly worth it if the price is happiness and peace? And you, which story haunts you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to keep uncovering more explosive Hollywood secrets, remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because behind the stage lights, many dark truths are still waiting to be told.